Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Ananda Koda Vaishnava Vrinda Nalamacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Chapter, and we're going from text 21 all the way to 30. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
we'll start when we clockwise, start with your submission, text on 21.
Can I just check what page that is?
Oh, which book it is now? Which page is it?
167, is it? Page 94, is it?
I'm 154 on this one.
In this one? Yeah, sorry. Oh, Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible?
No, I don't think it's that
that's
one.
actually chapter 3, verse 21.
Chapter 3, yeah.
Oh no, you have same with me.
So is it 94 page?
No, it's chapter 3, text 21. That's actually chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah.
So maybe if you take
She's the print bigger in that book, is it?
It is bigger actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it is.
Here, I'll swap you. What about that? Okay. Thanks.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay. Oh, son of Prada, is it?
Prita.
Prita, is that I'm on the right one, am I?
Yes.
Son of Prita. There is no work prescribed for me within all three planetary systems, nor can I what's that?
In
Want
want.
of- nor can I want of anything, or have I need obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties.
So if I ever fail to engage carefully performing prescribed duties, O Prata, certainly all men will follow my path.
If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings.
As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, learned may similarly act, but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path.
So as not to disrupt the minds of the ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness.
The spirit, so bewildered by the influences of a false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are not actually carried out by the three modes of the unilateral is
Material nature.
nature. Okay.
One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, Almighty All, does not engage himself in the senses or sense gratification, knowing well the differences between working devotion and work for fruitive results.
Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge.
Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight.
I don't know. I was saying to Laura earlier that it would be nice, because she reads so nicely, if we put that onto our, our temple, and just have it playing on the week during the week, so that we can listen to it. So when time comes for the class, we're used to what's actually going to be said, So if we could do that, I don't think, can that be done? Do you think?
Yes, you
Okay.
can do it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Because then we'd be ahead of ourselves, and we'd know, we'd listen to. Sometimes it's easier just to listen to it for a couple of minutes than to go to take out the book, start to read.
Yeah.
It's important to do both, but it would be nice to kind of listen to it a few times beforehand. Yeah. Great. That would be really nice. So this is even starting off with the verse here is one of the powerful verses. Yad Yajatarati Shreshtas Tad Tadavetaro Prapto. I'm going to try to read the whole of it because I don't know. Sayat Pramanan Kurite Lokas Tadan Vartate. That whatever action a great man performs, others follow, and whatever standards he sets, all the world pursues. So Prabhupada in the purport talks about that we have to teach by practical behavior, and he gives one example. Is that if a person is smoking, they can't tell somebody else not to smoke because it doesn't have any effect, it's hypocritical. So Prabhupada gives that example that we actually need to live properly, so that, and then we're able to speak on the subject matter. If we're actually living that subject properly, then we can actually speak it properly, and people will be affected by it, and will take it seriously. He also gives another example. He says that some of the great textbooks, he talks about the Manu Samhita. Don't know if anybody's ever read the Manu Samhita. It is quite a serious book, It is one of the law books. Manu is kind of one of the lawgivers, and actually Manu, man, that's where the word man comes from, and I think it's in Latin it's the same as Manu, so I'm not sure. But definitely, the Manu is the lawgiver. But some of the laws in the Manu Samhita would be considered quite severe today. They would be quite difficult to follow. But that's not to say that we should reject them. We should know what those are. But anyway, the laws are there also in the other books, and in the example of the devotees, how the devotees, how Prabhupada, when he was here, what standards he set by his acts, because that's what this verse is saying as well. It's not just by a law book, but it's how people act. And sometimes because our laws are quite, by normal standards, the four regulative principles. Everybody knows the four regulative principles. There are no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxication. Yes. So they're by normal standards, they wouldn't be accepted, very well, or people would find it difficult to accept them. That's something which we can either practice, or else we can aspire to practice too. If we don't have them straight away, then we aspire, and time will. It's nothing in Krishna consciousness is artificial. You cannot do something artificial. It's just impossible. You can do it maybe for some time, and then you won't be able to do it after that. So that's why everything is gradual. It's a gradual process. So we do it, you know, as we are able to do these things, and you have to know why you want to do them. You know, because you're not able to. You can't give up something if you don't get a higher taste. You know, because you'll be doing it. Oh, I have to follow the 4 religious principles. Oh no, you know, and so it's like that's not what you want. You want somebody who's actually really happy and wants to and finds it really, really good. So these are different laws in which we follow. But it's said that somebody, the responsible people that are mentioned here are like the king. We don't have so many kings around, but the king was the head of state at that time. The heads of state at the moment, they leave something to be desired as regards examples to follow, you know, because in whatever century it was, they divided state and the religion. They put the two of them separate, and so therefore the politicians think that their moral behaviour, it doesn't really affect their, you know, their judgment. They think they can make judgments forgetting about morality. And that's basically what happens, because then politicians make popular choices, you know, without being controversial, the 8th Amendment, all of that sort of whole thing. Politicians are making choices based on what they think people will be happy with or whatever, but they've no knowledge. They've no knowledge of the, you know, of the whole science, spiritual science of what happens in that. And so therefore, it just keeps on going on and on and on. They make this law, that law, this law, this law, and gradually all laws get watered down. And but previously that wasn't the case. Previously, the system was that they had this brahmanas. They would be giving advice to the kshatriyas, who were the rulers. So they would be based on knowledge, on spiritual knowledge. And the brahmanas would not have any income. They would be paupers. That would be part of their dharma. Because once they accept money, if they're offering spiritual advice, then they can be bought over, and so therefore it doesn't. But then we have some examples of that in the world today, but then they tend to be, some of the places that it's put into practice tends to be fanatical. You know, you have the so-called spiritual rulers, and they seem to they apply the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law. And then they used to be that you hate the sin, but not the sinner. You know, but in these instances, it's the sinner gets blasted all the time. And I of course, I was actually thinking about this on the bus and on the way this morning, and probably Sarumi, do you know about the Christian background? Were you ever kind of open to that when you were in Mauritius? No? Was there much on the Christianity or anything like that? There is, yeah, there's a bit, I suppose.
Yeah, there is.
One of the things though from Christ, which is attributed to Christ, about when they were going to stone this woman because she committed adultery, and they came to him, they asked, what should we do, what should we do? And he said, well, the person who has not sinned, let him throw the first stone. Which was brilliant, actually. It was actually a brilliant statement, you know. And nobody did it. There's another example like that in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta is just after Srila Prabhupada, and then there's Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was a great saint, but he was very renounced, extremely renounced. And what he did is that he was so renounced that he wanted to, he used to stay by a toilet, a latrine, and sometimes in India the latrines or the toilets aren't the nicest places in the world, and the smell at least is pretty damning. But because he found that people would come and disturb him about very insignificant things, he used to stay by the latrine. so that people wouldn't come there. Unless you really wanted to get some knowledge, then you would go, and you'd tolerate the smell from the tree. But he was so renounced that great saintly people, when they die, you're supposed to make them put a samadhi, you know, and, you know, you're supposed to bury them, and you're supposed to have this stone where they used to be, and people would come and worship it. But Gorkishore Das Babaji, he said, no, I want you to tie my body to the back of a cart, and I want you to drive it all around all the villages and towns, just to and so people can see me being, you know, basically being torn apart, basically just being dragged along. And some of his disciples took it literally, and they were going to do this, you know. But Bhaktisiddhanta came and he says, how could you dare dishonor such a wonderful spiritual master? There's no way you should do anything like this. This is terrible. Stop this immediately. And some of them argued, but this was his instruction. This is instruction. And then he said to them that, okay, well, if somebody who hasn't had any impious thought in the last week, then that person is allowed to go and drive the cart around. And everyone became a little bit kind of, I said, but if you don't, then you're committing a great offense. So everyone became a little bit nervous, you know. And eventually, okay, if anybody in the last 2 days hasn't had any impious thought, then he can do that. But if so, and he does it wrongly, then he will commit a great offense. No one moved. This was a whole crowd gathered. Okay, if even in the last day, if anybody hasn't committed any impious activity, then they're allowed. And no one, almost everyone was afraid to move. And then he said, okay, now let's bury him properly, you know, and have the proper arrangements for a great saint's passing, you know. So it just shows you the humility of Bhakti of Gorkishore Das Babaji, but it also shows you that, you know, that whole point about, you know, in spiritual life, it's not the person. It's if there's something wrong, it's the sin, and it's not the person. And that is where fanaticism comes in, and where it's you're a sinner, you're to be removed or whatever, you know, that type of mentality. The next verse, because I'm looking at the time here, we have to go through it quite quickly. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for calling. Dina's been working all day downstairs, but it's really nice to see you coming. The next verse is, and this is very interesting because this is Krishna is speaking. Do you know? Krishna's now speaking to Arjuna. He wants, you know, he wants Arjuna to follow, basically, and he wants Arjuna to perform his duty. And now Krishna is saying, if I didn't perform my duty, then all the worlds would be put to ruination. Do you know? And in the purport, there's Prabhupada uses, just as a matter, if you can remember this, he uses some very significant verses from the Bhagavad Gita. So if Prabhupada is putting verses here in the Bhagavad Gita at this point, they're important verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Now this is from the Padma Purana, or this is from the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Sorry. This is what Krishna says. Now, if you can hear, if you can listen carefully to this, or if you can read it as I read it, it's at the bottom of page 155 in this book, and it's at the bottom of verse 22. I'm going to read the English. The Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and he is the greatest of all diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under his control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. They are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods and is the supreme director of all directors. Therefore, he is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no greater than him, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. So what I have written down in my notes here, it says, there's no fuzzy idea of God here, you know. It's a very clear idea, you know. All energy, everything is coming from him. He's controlling every single blade of grass, you know. Every atom is only moved. This is how powerful God is, you know. And we have a little potency ourselves. We can see it. You know, we like to do things. Everybody likes to do things, isn't it? I mean, there's different things that we enjoy doing, you know, and we are kind of like the doers in this activity. But that energy is given to us by God as well. It's given to us by Krishna. So our idea is to try to find out what our duty is. And I wanted to make this point as well, that, you know, as devotees, and the reason why we have these temples is that we're practicing what is going on in the spiritual world. We're in the spirit, the state of practice. There is Gora Leela going on in the spiritual world, like the whole Chaitanya Leela is going on there, which means there's constant chanting going on, and you know there's constant discussion about the scripture. There's constant laughter, love, fun. You know, it's the most ecstatic place there. Any pleasure that's going on here is only a little reflection of the eternal pleasure that's going on there. Also, the Radha Krishna worship, as we have in Innisrath, you know, Radha and Krishna are there. The whole world, the whole spiritual world is all engaged in that worship, and we have a particular place there ourselves as well. So we're practicing here in that situation, like we decorate the altar, we put flowers on the altar. You know, we worship when we come in, and we offer foods to Krishna. You know, we dance in front of Krishna. You know, we even exchange the deity is that we can exchange thoughts with the deity. Did you know that? That we can actually do that, and Krishna can actually reciprocate as well. This is a stage that we get to, but we can practice like that. We open our mind to the deity, you know, to Krishna. So Krishna so powerfully actually appears in these forms. So this is what we're doing here in this whole Krishna consciousness movement. I wanted to make another point here, if you'll forgive me for diverting for just a second. Does anybody know about the marches that are going on around the world at the moment in America and places about they're trying to stop the gun lobby in America? I happen to be kind of associated with it more because I was in Miami when the latest gun thing went on, you know, and 17 kids were killed within 6 minutes by some guy went in with a shotgun and started killing all the people, you know. And there's been a huge movement among the young people, like from all the people in school. They've all got together and they marched on Washington on Saturday. And like literally there was hundreds of thousands of people there, and it's all against the gun lobby, you know, because in America the gun lobby they make so much money out of selling guns to people, like literally multi-million. So the kids are saying this has to stop. You know, they're controlling the politicians. We have to stop these laws where anybody can go in and buy a gun and go around and shoot people. That's basically what they're doing. And I was listening to one of the speeches. One of the ladies, her name is Gonzalez, and she spoke for about 6 minutes. And I actually listened to it because I was kind of, when I was there, I'd seen what was going on, and it was so impassioned. I was actually tearful, basically, with the way she was speaking. You know, because she mentioned the names of all the 16 kids, and she said all the things that they wouldn't do anymore because they're no longer here. She knew most of them, and she said all the kind of very intimate little details. No more will they go out and meet their friend. No more will they see their other friend this way. No more will they go and play football with this other friend, whatever. And it was very heartrending, and it was absolutely, you know, very powerful the way it was done. And anyone ever hear of Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King, it was a great civil rights march. His granddaughter was there. She was 11 years old, and she was also there speaking, you know. So it was very powerful. Now, what I got out of it, I was very moved, but what I got out of it was this, is that they were thinking about the wonderful times those kids had, which they won't have anymore, you know. But this is only one spot life, you know. You know, this is one spot life that they're having. And the fact is that how do you think Krishna feels that we're not there with him anymore? You know, that we're not playing with Krishna anymore. You know, how do you think Krishna is so heartbroken that we're actually here? He's literally heartbroken that we're not there with him anymore. You know, and I was kind of thinking, like, such emotion from, it shows you what the emotion is like, even for in this world, how attached we are. So in the same way, we've actually, unfortunately, we've left Krishna. So Krishna is really, really heartbroken that we've left him. But at least now we're trying to go back. You know, we're actually trying to go back. We're making the steps, and Krishna's so happy we're doing that. But just like that girl and all those people were so compassionate, they don't want it to happen to anybody else. They don't want any more suffering. So in the same way, we're like agents for Krishna. We don't want there to be any more suffering because we're actually suffering not being with Krishna. We don't realize, we think we're kind of happy here, you know. We somehow or other think we're happy. You know, we get a little bit of taste of pleasure here, a little bit of here, and that it does it, kind of, we're numbed. You know, we think, yes, it's okay. But in fact, the majority of the people are under that. In fact, this is the laws of nature there. And we should be the same way. We should have that same compassion for everybody else. Do you kind of get that if we could bring that level of compassion into our lives, we would be able to help so many other people. And I don't mean that we would help them by, and I'm not saying these things are wrong, but we're not helping them just by giving them food, giving them clothing. We can do that as well. But that only lasts for one body, you know. We have to actually even go further and give them the energy and the knowledge whereby they can actually stop and they can go back and remain with Krishna forever and ever, you know, and be with Krishna forever. So they will be fully satisfied. So it's a whole. This is what the movement, the Krishna consciousness movement, is about. Is for ourselves to become conscious of Krishna in our own life, and then also to, when we get a glimpse of that, then we try to help other people as well. And Krishna's so happy. Bhagavad Gita is all about that. You know, there will never be one more dear than one who helps. So our whole activities here are all based on that. You know, we're all based on that. Even if, you know, whatever, when people come in, they see how beautiful the altar is. When we're out and we're chanting on the street, and you know, we're giving the holy name, we're giving out books, you know, giving out leaflets, we're giving out, you know, whatever, you know, whatever way it is. Or when we see our friend, we give them a book, or you know, there's so many ways in which we're trying to spread this. Or give some prasadam. That's another amazing way. So these are different ways in which, but we try to get people connected. It's nothing to do. It's not for us. We want to get them connected to Krishna. You know, automatically there we have that's what our kind of our family is like. You know, that's what we're trying to do, is, you know, in that way, you know, is to try to extend it so that Krishna's, you know, it's Krishna's family ultimately, because we're all Krishna's. You know, there's so many verses explain Sarva Yomi Shikantiya, that Krishna's the seed-giving father of all of us. So we're trying to bring people back. So I diverted a little bit there, but I did it specifically just to make that point, because I'm going to read this, just the Sanskrit. It's a beautiful Sanskrit. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samaschabhya vikascha drishyate parasya shaktir vividhe vishyate subhagviki kyanabhalakriyachara. And that's just, Prabhupada has put that in, is that everything is happening automatically in the spiritual world. It's like, it's an incredible sequence of events, and it's a natural sequence in which it's occurring. And his potency are multifarious, and but again, there's no fuzzy idea of God here. There's a very clear idea of who Krishna is, or who God is. So then in the next verse, Krishna says that when he came, he performed all prescribed duties. You know, if I did not perform, for if I ever failed to engage carefully in performing my prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. And this was Dheera's class yesterday. She was talking about Krishna following Dharma, so that we all would follow Dharma. There's no need for God to follow Dharma, because he's made the Dharma, but he's doing it just so that we can actually make benefit, you know, so that we learn how to act in that situation. And then he says, If I did not perform my prescribed duties, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. There's some classical, beautiful phrases that Prabhupada uses in this. Now he talks about the word Varna Shankara, which means that there is unwanted population. And unfortunately, that's kind of the state today. Previously, people would perform all sorts of, it's called Garbhadan, samskars. They would be kind of, before they would even conceive of a child, you know, they would actually have these different prayers, methods by which their mind would be purified, and they would be praying for a child to come from the spiritual dimension. You know, it was all very, very systematic and very, very, very beautifully the way they did that. And so there was these prescribed rules and regulations, and but nowadays that's not happening. But although as devotees, when that happens, yeah, there is certain samskars that we do perform before conceiving of children. But it says here that Prabhupada says, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. Whew, this is really incredible because this is the whole idea of the population, and this is if people are satisfied and happy, then they actually can really help the world, you know, because there is such a need for that. I mean, Mahatma Prabhu, he often puts in these little quotes that we send out every so often. He talks about that we should work on ourselves. That it's very difficult to make the whole world peaceful if we're not peaceful ourselves. So this study of Bhagavad Gita, chanting Hare Krishna, and not just study Bhagavad Gita, we have to act. And this is what this is about, acting in Krishna consciousness. And it's quite funny because Krishna says that, or Manu made this point, it's not that just, that we try to be good or try to act properly when we're reading or something like that, but we do it, our whole day is an opportunity to actually act properly, to act in a proper way. Every minute, every second, is an opportunity. How many times do we fail? Maybe many. And the secret is if we can chant in the morning time. If we can chant in the morning time early, we're in a good situation then to act properly throughout the day. But even when we do get up early, sometimes our mind is disturbed. And even sometimes it's good that before you take rest, then you kind of clear your mind, or maybe you don't eat just before you take rest, because then you kind of wake up, and then chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, it starts to really drift, So the idea is that we try to regulate our lives so that we can actually chant in the most, conscious when we're chanting. And that is, believe it or not, that's the actual austerity for the age. The actual austerity is to be conscious to hear the holy names when we're chanting. Isn't that amazing? That's the actual yoga for the age. Just at that time. Because it's like you could say, here's 2 hours, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, And because our mind suddenly balks at the idea, thinks, oh no, so here's my chanting, oh, it's going to be, I'm going to chant. And then suddenly the mind goes off and thinks about everything else. And the mind is going into all sorts of, just because it's rebelling against wanting to hear, and it becomes a little, not lazy, well it is lazy, but it becomes, it thinks that it won't be enjoyable. Oh, this is only 3 words and it's one mantra. The mind has got so many ways in which it tries to prevent that. But that's actually the yoga for the age as well, And that actually that's really where we need to work as well. And I hope to get Mahatma back, or some of the other devotees back soon, so we can do japa meditation again, just because we need kind of remedial measures with our japa all the time, all the time. It just helps, because then the next morning you're chanting a bit better, and you see, oh God, this is actually brilliant, this is actually good, so it's just we need to keep reminding. Also in this, there's a warning against imitation as well. So, Krishna consciousness means that we are acting to please Krishna. Sometimes in the Vedas, and this is a lot, that we have to make a point here that this, Krishna is talking about the Vedas, and the Vedas were more prominent at that point than they are now. But in the Vedas, that people, they are attached to enjoying the senses here in this planet. They think this is all there is. That if I enjoy my senses here, or in my next life, they're actually a little bit more advanced than now. They're thinking in my next life. So if I act now in this way, I will have good education, I will be beautiful, I will have money, I will have good heritage. These are the sort of the opulences, you know. So they're acting in a certain way now so they can get that. And the Vedas allow that. And they can pray to demigods for those things. You know, Goddess Lakshmi, yes. You know, sometimes you go into a shop and you have the Goddess Lakshmi there. And Ganesh to keep the, you know, any disturbances away. You know, these are wonderful servants of Krishna. They're wonderful servants of God. They're very important. But we cannot bribe them, you know. They're not there to be bribed, you know. They are there to be worshipped and glorified, and you automatically do that by worshipping Krishna. So, but there's a whole group of people who do that. They pray to these demigods so that they can have greater wealth and greater security in lifetimes to come, and they perform all these rituals to get these things. And some of them are quite scientific, even, you know. And so Krishna is saying, don't disturb them if they're doing that, you know. But just gradually try to bring them around, because if they worship a demigod, then they will start to worship God then ultimately when they see more clearly. And Krishna ultimately, because they're worshipping something higher than themselves, you see. So just to get into that, like it said, another description of what the demigods are, they're Krishna's material manifestation here. That's another I read in the Bhagavad Gita recently. Because people want to worship something, and so they can only worship something immediate, that's so clear to them that provides them something, money, wealth, anything. So they worship God, like, please God, you know, may I get my exam. Now you can also that's the person, go to Krishna if you want to, but better not to. That we're trying to work it out. No, better too, but the higher is if we just want to please Krishna. So, but still, Krishna's material manifestations here, so they're visible, they're more clearly there. Whereas the deity is actually spiritual, is beyond matter, but we just have to learn, have to train ourselves how to see Krishna. There's a big need for that actually in the West. But this point is there, is that Krishna says don't disturb them, you know, because they'll study the Vedas and ultimately they come to understand Krishna from that. Now one of the most powerful verses in Bhagavad Gita comes up then. It's verse 27, and it says, Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvashaha ahamkar vibhutatma kartaham iti manyate. And this is, Krishna says, or Prabhupada says about that the mechanism of the body, right? We know what the mechanism of the body, that's this here, is produced by material nature under the supervision of the Lord. So this is produced. We didn't do it. We didn't make these bodies. You know, Krishna allowed the whole facility. The gross and also the subtle body, that means the mind, the intelligence and the ego, that's also subtle, that's physical. And instead of using those gross and subtle things for ourselves, we use them in the service of Krishna. Because ultimately, if we're using them in the service of themselves, then it's three modes of nature are just acting, you know. The mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. Does anyone here ever feel tired, even after a good night's rest sometimes? You know? That's the mode of ignorance. It is pretty powerful. Or sometimes one feels like, really, I want to do this. I mean, it was yesterday, an incident that really, Shani caught me out on one yesterday. I wanted to bring the collection box for one of the boys to count the money up, because I had gone on his case because he was messing around the window and throwing, you know, little cups out, you know. And I didn't want them near the window anyway, that's why we had those bars there. They were right up against the window. So it was really good that those bars are there, by the way. It's quite interesting, you know. And but I didn't want to kind of give him a bad impression when he comes to the temple that I'm there, I'm a heavy guy, I'm just giving him, you know, so I wanted to get him to do something positive, you know. So I went, Shani had put sometimes he can't still actually, you know, so I asked her, Shani, for the actually, and she says, okay, yeah, I'm getting it, and I was afraid he was going to go, and I said, no, hurry up, give me that actually, give it to me now. She says, hold on, I'm just putting it in another bag, and then I realised, I said, don't be so passionate, she said to me. I said, she got me, you know, because my mind was like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do, you know. Now sometimes we have to do things, even in the mode of goodness, you do things in that sort of a way. But it was a good reminder for me not to also be in that's the mode of passion sometimes, when you're thinking about everything, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Whereas sometimes you need to deliberate before acting, you know. Because the mode of passion, sometimes you don't think, you just go and do something, you know. And that's the mode of, clearly the mode of passion is just acting through us, you know. So we're trying to get it in such a way that we get to the mode of goodness, you know. Now that is not so easy, because recently I became angry about something, and when I was being angry, I was looking at myself. There you go again. Yeah, just look at you. You know, you're getting angry over what? Over nothing, and you're still angry. Try to stop it, and I couldn't. I was finding it difficult, and but you know, I could see that the mode of goodness. If, you know, I wasn't knocking myself too bad. I did okay. You know, I kind of pulled myself out of it, and, you know, and became a little bit more even-minded again. But this is how the modes of material nature can act. You know, they like in the morning time. Generally, the mode of goodness is more prevalent. Then during the daytime, the mode of passion, we're running around doing things, and more in the evening time, we get kind of sleepy and whatever, tired. But the modes are always acting on us, and we are different from those modes. This is the point I'm trying to say. We are the soul, we have free will, and what we need to do in this world is we need to use our physical body and our subtle body in the service of Krishna. And we do that by doing all the activities that we're doing, you know, either at home or in work. You know, we have a whole day, even at work. We still have to we do it as a service to Krishna, or when we're in the temple, and then we're doing all these activities to please Krishna, you know. So in that way, we're using our, you know, our body, and we're using our mind, and we're using our intelligence, you know, how to please Krishna all the time. So this is how we express our individuality, and this is what we become expert in, and we hear from the higher authority how we can do that, you know. And then we get inspiration from within as well, you know, and then we have the books in which we can actually also cross-reference. Is this what we should be doing? So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. It's his duty, right? We all are little Arjunas. We all have our duties that Krishna is trying to give us. So we have to try to get onto that circuit, so that we can perform these activities. Because we're performing those activities, then we're actually performing outside of nature. We're not in the modes of nature. And I put that on silent. Where's that going? Yeah, on silent. And it's going to ring again. So. Just have to switch it over. Won't be much longer. So the devotee, it says he's in knowledge of his position in sense gratification, so therefore he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. This is verse 28, which is, one who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, Almighty Arm, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work and devotion and work for fruit of results. So the devotee is, do you understand that? We're not working just so as to satisfy ourselves, but we're trying to work in devotion. So that's what we're practicing on at the moment. You know, we're working to work in devotion. The next verse is that, bewildered by the modes of nature, The ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached, but the wise should not unsettle them, although those duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. See, the problem is that people are lazy. I'm not just knocking people, this is the fact. We're always busy in the material world, and there's an incredible verse here. Let me just explain. Prabhupada says in the purport, this is one of the most astounding things I've ever heard. And it says that Krishna is saying that we should not disturb people if they're completely because it's a waste of time. They're so absorbed. Could you ever try to tell somebody about Krishna consciousness and they're just completely they don't know what you're talking about? You know, they just want to. Can you buy it in the pub? You know, or whatever. You know, Krishna consciousness is that. You know, you know, they just don't know what you're talking about. So Krishna says that we should not disturb because it's just wasting your time, and sometimes you make them annoyed even. You know. But Prabhupada says that Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. And then Prabhupada says, but the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord. They're more kind than the Lord. Because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they take all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men, to try to engage them in acts of Krishna consciousness, which is absolutely necessary for the living entity. So even people who are not interested, sometimes we even approach them. You know, we try to, and try to get something favorable. I know one of my spiritual mentors is Vaisheshika, and he says that when you're spreading Krishna consciousness, especially if you're distributing books on the street, you just say hi, and if somebody says hi back to you, they're a little bit more favorable. You say hi to somebody on the street, and they just blank you. They're maybe not ready yet, you know. So it's just, you know, you just find favorable people, a little bit of favorable, and you fan the spark, you know, and you try to make them a little bit. They take a book. 2 people gave me, stopped me and gave me some Lakshmi, and bought a book from me the other day. One was an older lady. She was about 70, 75. I don't think she knew anything about spiritual life at all. No, not spiritual life, about what I was presenting to her. But she just kind of was just very kind-hearted, you know. She said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll take a book. And she gave me €2 and said, here's another €2. And she gave me €4, you know. And it was just out of the kindness of her heart, you know, she did that. But, you know, it's incredible. And then there was another person, he was drunk, you know. But he was very kind-hearted. He stopped and he said, okay. And then, here, you know, good luck. And he said, God bless. and he went on his way, you know. So, I mean, it's amazing. Krishna is incredible. Like he has, and he's in those people's heart, you know, and he's getting them to make that advancement just by touching, and they're making progress. That's progress for them to take the book of spiritual energy, you know. So it was very very powerful. But I'll just finish because there's another astounding sentence in the very last verse. That's Mai Sarvani Karmani Sarvas Yatma Chetasa Nirashar Nirmamo Bhutva Yudashva Vikatajvara. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge unto me, without desire for profit, and with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. You know, lethargy is something whereby you just, I don't want to do it. Oh no, you know, it's the mode of ignorance, basically. You know, and it you know, it's always there. It's always there with me anyway. And you know, and then unfortunately, because in Ireland there's a culture of intoxication from a very early age, that leads into people being lethargic, you know, and not wanting to do anything, because that's what intoxication does. Just you know, it takes your energy, your desire to do something. It just takes it away, you know. And you know, that's why the people are, when they're drunk, they say stupid things, you know, but they think it's really intelligent, you know. They think they're speaking, you know, great pearls of wisdom, you know, and then but it's not, right? And so they don't do things then, and they don't see any clarity. So So but this verse, Prabhupada says, is this verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. You know, so the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is surrendering your works unto me, do your duty. Or in Arjuna's instance here, it says fight, do your duty. So Krishna is just encouraging us here. You know, we have to do our duty, and it's magnificent if a community of devotees develop, you know, and who work with each other, and who respect and love each other, and who all work to please Krishna, you know, and they, you know, it's the most powerful thing, basically. That's all I can say. I mean, it's like this is what we're meant to develop in Christian consciousness, like a community of devotees who are working in that way, and we're not arguing with each other, but we're just working at how we can do more to serve Krishna, you know, and our discussions are always about how we can do this bit more and so on. That is the ideal situation. We're not in an ideal world, and we're coming from forward backwards. It doesn't always work out like that. So we can't be utopian either, you know. But at the same time, we should. This is the goal of, because that's the way it is in the spiritual world. This is actually how it is. But we should try to create that. I remember I just finished on a very short point. But when I came to Krishna consciousness, it was a time when there was 13 or so, 15 devotees were becoming initiated, and I just came to the temple for the first time, and somehow I thought I was being initiated as well. You know, and there were these people. They were all glowing. You know, they were absolutely. You know, they were all ready to take these vows, and the spiritual master was there. And anyway, it was a very powerful occasion, because at the time, as the spiritual master, one's previous karma is taken away. That's the idea of what the idea of the spiritual guide. He removes that karma from you know, from a previous karma, and so it's a very purifying occasion, actually, very powerful as well. So anyway, I just kind of walked into this and saw this whole thing. And it was actually being filmed by the TV station as well. It was the RTE were filming it because it was, you know, one of their some religious programs going on. So it was very powerful. The energy was there at the time. But I remember seeing all the devotees, and I thought they were from some other planet or something, you know. But this is actually, they were actually in one sense, because they're from Krishna Loka, and they were kind of coming back to that platform there and then, and they were making this concerted effort to get out of the material world. So it was a very special occasion. But again, it's not a one-off thing. You know, it's something that you have to, you know, you practice throughout your whole life. Actually, you know, as you always realize, oh, actually, you know, it wasn't just all happened at once, but you know, this is going to take a lot of effort on my side as well. You know, it's easy, it's sublime, but it does take quite an internal endeavor, and we progress internally by hearing, by chanting, and by associating with devotees, and you know, and by taking the association as well, and that actually that will cultivate. It's like a fertilizer, or it said this, it's like water actually. The bhakti-lata, or the creeper of devotion. It's a spiritual thing. Going to the spiritual world, it's watered, and then by those things, by chanting, by hearing, and by discussing and associating. Is there any questions? Any comments? Sorry, just took time slow.
You mentioned again, what was the last thing, the important, the last, you know, last end of last verse?
Yeah, that
Sentence you meant.
By surrendering all your, the Prabhupada says, this verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. So, and the Lord instructs one. Actually, everybody, so it's because it's such an important one, we should all read that. We won't read it together now because it's a little bit late. I don't want to keep everybody wrong. But that was a verse, and I remember as devotees who used to do Sankirtan, this would be a big verse for them, because this is like such a Krishna's just okay, let's go. And you know, and sometimes with that kind of encouragement, you can go further than you think you can, you know. And spiritual life a lot of the time is like that. You mean, Dina knows that in the practicing for the you know, when you're doing training, you know, you keep on stretching that little bit further all the time, you know, and you motivate yourself. And Dina does it through regulation, isn't it? You have a certain amount of things you do. So chanting is a little bit like that. Just my own personal example in that is that sometimes I might feel a little bit tired. Maybe I should take a little rest. But usually if I can push through that, then in a few more verses I've chanted rounds, I'm thinking, Hare Krishna, I don't need rest actually. But the mind is coming up with that. Maybe I should have a little something to eat now. What's on Facebook again? Or, you know, no, Hare Krishna, no. And sometimes if you can pace yourself through those things. And that's why, and this is something that Sarumi actually said, she remember that time he wanted us to do more of the 64 rounds. And that was because you get through a lot of those barriers when you actually go beyond 60, you go into 30, 35, 40.
16 the next day.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
16
You kind of, it comes, wow, you're flying, basically. Well, at one point, the devotees used to stay up all night on Akadashi and chant 64 rounds, and then eventually they you know, maybe take a little rest the next day, but the next day you're absolutely fired up, you know. It's you're very, very spiritually alert and awake. So sometimes those little things are good, and that's why we're doing the 6-hour kirtan, you know, and doing the, you know, if you do a little 64 round. Because back to Bhagavad Gita, remember he said you should do it. He's coming back. He's going to ask you.
He actually said to send him an email. He asked us.
He
asked us to actually do it like 2 times a year or something, and then send him an email and tell him, oh, we haven't done.
Tomorrow is Ekadashi.
Oh yes, okay.
It's tomorrow.
Yeah. That's what the devotees do on the island, you know.
They do it regularly.
They do it a little bit, and then it stops. You know, it's something that's hard to make, because the Ekadashi days change from day to day. You know, you really need somebody to push it, though. You know, I really do. You know, but it's one that. But at least when we're chanting, you know, our rounds, that we should try to be attentive, or we should try to, you know, keep working through those kind of barriers, and then they so, but that's what I was actually asking Prakosh on Saturday to really work at bringing devotees here, and if we can ask these 2 devotees, Vishaka and Yadavar, because they're bringing the film here at the end of May. We'll still be here actually at the end of May, and it means that they are very, very advanced devotees, very, very nice devotees as well, very natural devotees, you know. I remember one time myself and the Shani were in the manor, and we were queuing up for prasadam, and like it was Jamashtami, and there's literally 70,000 people come there over 2 days, you know. And I don't know what was happening, but it was a long, hot day, and then this young lady, she was about 19 or 20s, and she came over, and she kind of saw that we were a little bit older, and we're kind of, and she says, can I get you something, you know? I said, what? and she, no, and they went off and brought us some prasadam. This was literally, there was so many people there. We were just one in the crowd, like, you know, and eventually found out that it was their daughter, you know. So immediately we thought, oh, this is incredible. You know, somebody's actually thinking like that, because most people were elbowing each other to get up the line, you know, to get prasadam, you know. So, but somebody else was thinking, oh, this person must win, so what can I do to serve, you know. So that was just an example anyway, that I thought was pretty good. Practical example, you know, means more than actually speaking, you know. So that's why as devotees we try to be examples of. So when I'm getting angry or something like that, I have to be able to not get angry and control it properly. And you know, in that sense, when people see devotees, that they're at peace, if they're actually at peace, then it has a huge effect, you know. That's what will, you know, help people, you know, take to Krishna consciousness. Above and beyond that, we also need a practical structure for it, and that's what Prabhupada set up the whole of Iskcon for that, with that in mind. So that's something that we need to try to also work on too. I mean, we've got this temple here, which is pretty good. You know, it's a good start, but we have to spread out, you know, a bit more as well, so that more people can feel easier to be part of it. You know, that would be. I think it's eventually we have employment for devotees. You know, so devotees can work with each other. You know, and okay, there's no more questions. Any questions? I'll stop there. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Next week is 31 to 40.
43,
No,
No.
I was thinking to do 31 to 40 and then 41 to 43 the next week, but then we do a recap as
Okay.
well. Yeah. Did you think any further? That's what I mentioned to you a little while ago about
So you were going to talk to Ananda.
Krishna, the same person.
Ananda.